the killing of black kids.
Y'all know why we here. Y'all know exactly why we're here. The talk of the town is Pastor Philip Anthony Michelle, and he has went viral for his commentary about the black community and basically has said to stop blaming cops for the deaths of black kids. That's the headlines. I have not seen the video. I've heard a lot of discussion. I've had a lot of talks with many different black Christians on the topic of discussion. I even had a discussion and a back and forth where this girl was trying to tell me that pro-blackness is not biblical, and she tried to equate it to hating. Mind you, she has a blonde wig. I ain't gonna do the wigs today, y'all. I ain't gonna do the wigs today. But she going back and forth with me, and I'm just telling her, like, I don't think pro-blackness can be equated to hating anyone. And then she just outright came at me. She was like, I don't listen to people who are unbelievers and bashes Jesus and Christians. Like, your opinion is like a filthy rag. I was like, okay. I'm just trying to inform you that pro-blackness has nothing to do with hating any other race of people. But here you go. You know, serve your white Jesus all you want. Anyways, this has been the topic of discussion for a lot of black Christians. If y'all are familiar with my series, I always love to say that if you're a black and Christian, I highly question your blackness. All right. I have a whole series on that on Instagram. If y'all are familiar with my You Can't Be Black and Christian series. All right. So I might have to just add this to the bunch. I might actually do a little, short review, and then I'll have this uploaded, I'll probably upload this you'll probably be seeing this in the afternoon, most likely, I hope. But yeah, man, let's get into the video.
Stop blaming white cops for the killing of black kids. Instead, teach your black children to be obedient towards authority. And I don't care if most of y'all are black. You need to teach your children to obey authority. We need to teach our sons and daughters to obey authority. We need to teach our children to not fight against authority, not fight against cops, not rebel. Be model citizens. Stop being rebellious towards authority. Be submitted to laws and ordinances. Stop parking in handicapped spaces unless you want a reason to park there. Pay your taxes and stop cheating on your documents. I'm going to go deep. I'm about to get everybody mad. Stop bending your numbers. Watch. The Lord said, give back to Caesar what belongs to him. That is, be submitted to governmental authority. See, now watch. I see all of y'all looking at me. You know why you're looking at me like that? Because you don't read. After Jesus is resurrected, I don't care. I don't care. I don't care. When I was 15 years old, I'm walking up Hollis. I'm walking down Hollis in Queens. And an Italian cop drove right by me. And I locked eyes with the cop, and we stared at each other, and he drove by. My ego and his ego. No cameras. No iPhones, no social media, no recordings. And then he says one word to me. Listen to what he says to me. This is what he says to me. He says to me, watch, say something. And in that moment, I hear the voice of my mom and my father. Son, obey authority. Son, respect your elders. Son, don't be in trouble out there with the police. Son, make sure you listen to people when they talk, and I can hear them blah, 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 blah. No. And in that moment, with that Glock pressed to my head, I got to make a decision. Either my ego is going to be strong, or my submission to authority is going to be stronger than my ego. And if I have not been taught to obey authority, and because I'm not saved, I'm separated from God now for all eternity. By a cop's bullet. Why? Because my ego was stronger than my submission. I don't care.
Well, that was a lot. I felt like that was racially motivated in a way. And a lot of those things, Black Americans, you could probably say some of them do. A lot of these things that he pinpointed in the beginning, I can't really relate to or associate with. And I do know family members who have done this, so I don't want to say it on this platform, if it might bite them or bite me back in the future. So I won't even say who's did what. But here's the thing, there wasn't a lot of empathy and clarity and space given for this conversation. You cannot start off a conversation saying something very emotional or very sensitive, and I would know I'm somebody that always starts controversy. I always start controversy with just kaplow, you know what I mean? But when it comes to these type of settings, and he's just really emphasizing on just compromise, comply, obey, comply. And the thing is, that's biblical. That's biblical. In the Bible, it tells you, slaves, obey your masters. Even do good to them when they are unreasonable, and when they do bad against you, obey them. That is biblical. That is in the Bible. That's in there. With that being said, that's a lot of bullshit. Because if we're going by this assumption that obeying authority and obeying the law gets you farther in life, I got news for you. Based upon the history of Black people, we had to go against the law to get our freedom. We had to go against the law to fight for our justice, freedom, and equality. We had to go against the law and what the government had to say about us in order for us to be where we are today. Our ancestors, and people have been trying to say, oh, he's not really Black American, this and that and the third. But it seems like he knows what he's doing, or it seems like he knows, at least to the point of that experience, right? The thing about it is, with this conversation, the reason why it's very controversial and it's sensitive, I will tell you what I agree with, I will tell you what I disagree with, and then I will tell you how this conversation should be conveyed. Because the thing is, he's having this conversation, and it's not exclusively with Black people. He might even, I'll give him the benefit of a doubt that he might have a predominant Black audience. But even with you having a predominant Black audience, you shouldn't have a conversation like that in front of other folk. That's just 100%. You shouldn't have a conversation about this with other sets of people in the midst, because the mentality and what you're sending off and the message you're sending off, that mentality, they're going to 10x that. The white people in that audience, they're going to 10x that. The Hispanic people, they're going to 10x, 20x that. The Asian community, they're going to 10. And so you as a leader, you as a pastor, you are seen as a voice and a leader and a representation and a model and a inspiration. And for you to say something like that, people are going to run with that. I want you to really understand that. So for you to say, stop blaming white cops for offing Black kids, is a dangerous motto, a dangerous statement to say in front of your congregation, because that's going to push on a certain narrative against Black kids. That's going to push on a certain narrative against YNs. So anytime that you're going to have these incidents with these white cops, with the government, you're going to go back to this narrative, you're going to go back to this mentality, go back to this conception. You need to get your kids under control. They should have just obeyed the law. They should have just complied. Now, I'll be the first one to tell you that I'm not somebody who is an advocate for the Black Lives Matter movement. I could be the first one to tell you that I find it a little contradictory that a lot of Black people will be up in arms about whatever happens with police brutality, but will be so quick to cut bridges with one another. Understand that, right? At the same time, there's a time and a place to have these type of conversations, and there's also a better way to convey this type of message. Telling the Black community to focus on complying to the law, given the history of what the law used to reinstate, or what the law used to say or what it used to be authoritative about concerning our blackness and our well-being. We're dealing with a government that considered us three-fifths of a human. They didn't even consider us fully human. It was legal to literally take advantage of us. There are states in the 21st century that they just made lynching illegal. There are still sundown towns in the South. Black people still getting lynched. Black people still getting taken advantage of. Black girls are still getting trafficked. Black kids still being kidnapped. You see what I'm saying? Just because things are better in society and we have somehow advanced as a people does not mean that things have changed. The more things change, the more things stay the same. So where I am very disappointed with Mr. Phillip here is for you to have this conversation, and it's not exclusively with black people, and also the way that you're conveying this message. I hope he doesn't have a white wife. All right. I will leave Black Twitter to that. I won't even go and see if he does or not. But like I said, there's a time and a place to have these conversations, and you shouldn't have a conversation like this in front of your congregation if it's not all the way black. And even more so with a lot of these black Christians, they're trying to push this whole one love or all one race. That's stuff that I was seeing on my thread on Instagram. And there's nothing that he said about this that had anything to do with one love and one race, the human race, and all this other type of stuff. Even to the girl who was talking about there's no racial pro-race this or that in the Bible, but there is a lot of racial and ethnical favoritism to Yahweh when it comes to Yahweh and his love for Israel, or the seed or offspring of Jacob, according to the promise of Abraham, making him a holy nation, or making him a father of many nations. That's a big level of favoritism. And that's something that is constantly reiterated about the Israelites and their forefathers of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. That is a level of favoritism that symbolizes ancestry, that symbolizes heritage. It's the whole 9 and 10. So I could see why this is a very big topic of discussion. I don't know what other people are saying out there. I just wanted to really blindly watch this and give my personal and first and foremost input on this. Like I said before, there is a time and a place to have this conversation. I do understand the caution when it comes to dealing with cops, when it deals with, this type of discussion. But there is a time and a place to have these type of discussions, and it should never be dismissed in terms of the history of police brutality with just stop blaming white cops for the deaths or the offings of black kids. It's a very sensitive statement to make in your position as a leader. Right? You could say something like that, and I don't condone saying it, but I'm just saying what weighs out more, you being a pastor and a leader and a father, rather than somebody who's just regular person casually saying that on Twitter or on Instagram. You feel what I'm saying? You're a leader. You have influence. You have people are looking up to you. You're a role model. You're an example for other men. The black men in your congregation, the white men in your congregation, the Mexican men in your congregation. So when you push off that narrative to them and they pushing it down to their kids, that creates a very toxic environment to even deal with the problems that we are dealing with in the society. Very toxic. And to even push a little bit more, to be even a little bit more controversial in this topic, this is why I say that it is very controversial for you to be black and Christian. Because you almost have to literally erase or disregard your blackness in order for you to be a Christian. For you to even make a statement like that, and just to say this biasly, only for this occasion, but for you to even make a statement like that even advocates more for my personal outlook on you being black and Christian. It's this double state of consciousness. How could you really say something like that? And you're basing your personal experience like a police officer trying to provoke you. Say something. I dare you. Say something. And like I said, there's a time and place to have these conversations. Of course, you shouldn't just lash out and crash out. You shouldn't just put your hands on officers or get riled up when they want you to, or find a reason to try and put hands on people, whatever. The usual. You know what I'm saying? That's the bare. But to disregard or to dismiss police brutality and the history, especially with black people, the history that we have had with the police raiding into our different movements and environments, and the government assimilating and interfering with our progression and advancement, taking over the civil rights movement, owning the NAACP, owning the abolition movement. A lot of things were infiltrated by the government. A lot of the reason why the Black Wall Streets that we had throughout the world, and the many prosperous black towns that we had across the United States, most of them were burnt down to the ground because they were infiltrated. The U.S. government flew bombs over Tulsa, Oklahoma, over Black Wall Street, Little Africa. You see why it's insensitive to make a conversation or to make a statement like that. Teach your kids to obey and comply. I don't even think Martin Luther King would agree with that. Matter of fact, I want to quote something from Martin Luther King. Just because I know Martin Luther King wouldn't agree with that. I know MLK has a quote on unjust laws. I know he does. Martin Luther King, one quote from him says, "One has a moral responsibility to disobey unjust laws. A law is unjust if it is inflicted on a minority that, as a result of being denied the right to vote, had no part in enacting or devising the law. Who can say the legislator of Alabama, which has set up the state's segregation laws, was democratically elected? One who breaks an unjust law must do so openly, lovingly, and with a willingness to accept the penalty." And that is a man who stands for something, bro. He also says an unjust law is no law at all. And like what I'm saying, like you two, there's a lot of context that need to be had when having that discussion. You cannot be a leader, a pastor, a father, a black man saying something like that with the platform and influence that you have, and hopefully, retract on this and be like, you know what, I should have added more context to this. I shouldn't have said this so, regard to the many families, the history that black people had to deal with, the many instances and occasions and events throughout history where black people had to deal with the police, and the trials and tribulations and struggles that our ancestors had to go through to get to where we are today. Carelessly made these type of comments and thinking that you're standing up for God. But like I said, everything that he is saying can be seen in a biblical manner. Everything he said. There's not one thing that he said that can't be traced back biblically. Does that matter to me? Fuck no. It doesn't make any difference to me, because forget that, bump that. If the book that you've been given is telling you to comply with the person who is causing the most damage and the most trauma to you, get rid of that book. If a book is telling you to obey and love the person that is committing the most harm to you, even when they are unreasonable, when they are out of it, as if they were Christ themselves, you need to get rid of that book, or you need to really question your religion. That's all I gotta say. Y'all let me know how y'all personally feel about this in the comments below. If you enjoyed this type of commentary based on these type of topics, I do have this video here where I go very much in depth on the basis of being black and being Christian. And I even go to the basis of the white Jesus Savior complex. You're gonna love this one. I'll see you on the next one.